Welcome all. We will get this thing started. My name is Noelle, and I am the Events and Alumni Relations Intern for the Central High School Foundation. This is super special to me because I am also a 2018 graduate from Omaha Central. I want to welcome you all and thank you for coming together from all over. I'm streaming to you from Fremont, Nebraska. I am a senior at Midland University, and I am going to be graduating with my degree in arts management. Before we get started, I want to go over a couple Zoom features. On your bottom control panel, you'll see the microphone button. We ask that during the reunion, you please keep yourself muted just in case the dog comes barking in. And next to the microphone, you'll see the button to control your video. We ask that you keep your video on so we can share the smiles and see fellow alumni throughout the evening. On the bottom control panel, you'll also find the chat icon. Press this to open up the group chat. As the reunion is going on, feel free to type any questions, comments, memories to share with the group. Remember to check who you are sending your messages to, and if you'd like everyone to see your message, select from the drop-down menu, Everyone. If you'd like only one person to see it, select their name from the drop-down menu. If you'd like to get my attention during the reunion at any time, feel free to individually chat me.
This is too much information.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
I want my manual typewriter back.
It's a lot. And imagine doing this for multiple classes, hours a day, right?
No.
Also, fun feature on the bottom, you will see a reactions button. It should have like a little person with like a plus sign. You can either do applause or thumbs up. So if you see that, can I see some reactions? Alec gives a thumbs up.
I don't know.
Janice gives a thumbs up. Susan, Gordon.
Is it reaction?
Yes, reactions.
How do you make it go away?
It'll go away
It went
automatically
away.
after a couple of seconds. Steve gives a thumbs up. Henry. Okay, this is awesome. So before we jump in, I want to give you a little bit of background about the foundation. As many of you already know, we were established in 1996 to support present and future Central students. And today we are even more committed to preserving the values of a Central high school education. The foundation supports the school through many activities like building relationships with alumni, fundraising, student scholarships, teacher classroom grants, and a whole lot more. And we love being able to work with you. We are so proud of the accomplishments that our students, staff, and 35,000 alumni achieve every single day. And your patronage not only supports Central, but also strengthens Eagle Nation. So thank you so much for streaming with us today. I am thrilled to introduce our moderator for the night, Henry Cortez. Henry has been a reporter and staff writer for the Omaha World Herald for more than 35 years. He joined the paper's sports department shortly after graduating from Central in 1981. After obtaining his journalism degree from UNO, he became a news reporter. He served as the paper's State House Bureau Chief in Lincoln for 8 years and has also covered crime, politics, the military, and public policy. He's a 5-time winner of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln Sorensen Award, which is an award given each year to recognize the state's most distinguished journalism, and has won national and regional awards for deadline writing, sports writing, feature writing, business writing, enterprise reporting, and investigative reporting. He has also written 4 books, including 2 on Nebraska football history, and in 2017 was inducted into the Central High School Hall of Fame. Henry, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, Noelle. No, yeah, thank you. You know, it's always an honor for me to do anything associated with Central. I still am very fond of that institution. And I should have mentioned to you that I'm also, as proud as I am of my Central roots, I'm even prouder to say I'm a father of a pair of 2017 Central grads. And I love going through Central just as much the second time with them. And so I'm looking forward to our discussion today.
Yeah, that's awesome. So what do you remember most about your time at the Nest?
I just remember that I loved it. I mean, it was the best unfortunately, only 3 years of my life, because we only got to go to Central for 3 years back in those days. And, but no, I did 3 sports, and I was on the register staff, and I was in the band, and, you know, I was totally into the academic environment of the place. And I mean, I was, from the moment I walked in that building, I was just so in awe of the place. I mean, the history of those creaky old halls, but it doesn't take you long to be in Central to realize that what really makes it special are the people. I got to go to school with just the most amazing group of really funny, quirky, super smart, super talented group of classmates that became good friends. And I can't stress them enough, and everybody you ever talk to went to Central talks about the diversity of the place. And I can't emphasize how important that was for someone going into a career like mine, where I literally interact with people from all walks of life, from every socioeconomic background. I mean, that experience is just invaluable. One of my favorite stories I love to tell about my days at Central related to its diversity was, and it didn't even happen in the halls, it happened at a track meet one day. Our assistant track coach was Bill Reed. And one day we were at this meet at Burke, and he handed me some money. He said, "Henry, there's a convenience store down the street. Why don't you run there and get me some cookies?" And I didn't have much going on. And so I ran down there, and I went, and I came back with these, with what I thought were pretty darn good cookies. And Coach Reed kind of looked at, handed them, and he kind of gave me this funny look, and he said, "Sugar cookies? Henry, Black people don't eat sugar cookies." And it was just like, well, who knew that? And, but it was, I mean, it's really experiences like that happen at Central every day that really teach you, you know, how to delight in the differences that we have among us. And that was such a shaping part of my Central experience. And of course, you can't talk about Central without talking about the tremendous teachers that we had there. I went to school with some of the Central legends. I mean, the Dan Dailies, and the Mr. Blanky, and Dr. Wolf, and of course the gentleman who's on with us today, Mr. Gaherty. I mean, he is absolutely the reason that I went into journalism and am a journalist today.
Absolutely. And how did your experience at the Register help put you where you're at?
Well, it actually even happened before I was in the Register. Back when I was in school, and Eric would attest to this too, you know, you didn't serve on the Register staff, at least in my year, until you were a senior. But junior year, you took a intro to journalism class, and I was taking that class. And Mr. Gaherty, I've talked to him about this. He does not remember the story, but I swear that it's true. I was taking this class, but I had no plans to go into journalism. I was taking it with 3 very close friends. One of them is Joel here. And one day, another friend of mine, Brian Keehan, at the start of class, as we were just sitting there waiting for class to start, he said, "Hey, Henry, are you going to be on the Register staff?" And I said, "No. You know, it's meeting at the same time of AP Physics, and I was planning to load up on AP classes." And well, that night, I mean, somebody had obviously overheard this, because that night I get home from swim practice, and my mom says, "Well, I just got a call from Mr. Gaherty, and he is very concerned that you are not going to be doing the Register." And, you know, and that was at a point in my life, you know, that you're not used to people, you know, telling you you're good at something, and that you might have a talent for something. And that was just very influential. I mean, I remember I told my mom right on the spot, "Well, I guess I'm going to be on the Register." And I did it, and I loved it, and I never looked back. By my first semester, I was already planning to major in journalism when I went to college. So he literally changed my life. You know,
I hope that story is true, but I don't remember it at all.
That's awesome. So what would you say your time on the Register was like with Mr. Gaherty?
Oh, he was such a great teacher. you know, he obviously showed us the ropes. I remember he even showed us how to read a newspaper, which and taught us about the importance of journalism. But but I just remember this incredible freedom that we had, because we decided what we were going to cover. We wrote the stories, we laid out the pages, and he was always there to offer us guidance or advice if we needed it. But we just had this incredible amount of independence. I just remember how empowering that was for a 17-year-old. And we, as a staff, I mean, we were just going to produce the best damn newspaper we could. And that's what we set out to do every time. And then we'd always, after the edition came out, it was always exciting to see the paper come out and see our work and see our names in the paper. And that was always a thrill. It's still a thrill. I remember
don't forget postmortem now.
I was just going to mention the postmortem and how aghast I was during the postmortem early on in my experience when you told me I'd spelled Tom Osborne's name wrong. I later wrote a book about Tom Osborne. I can tell you, I did not repeat that mistake when I wrote that book. So yeah, no, that was kind of the way we operated, and everybody knew that what the standards were. If everybody remembers back in the journalism room in those days, the just wall upon wall of awards, state awards that the Register had won over the years, and Mr. Gaherty had a huge hand in showing us the ropes and enabling us to do that.
That's awesome. I am sure that many of our fellow Eagles have those same fond memories. And at the ending, we would love to hear them from you. We have a little bit of time set aside to hear from y'all about your favorite memory, a couple minutes about your favorite memories working on the Register or book at Central. But at this point, I'd love to turn the table over to Henry, and he will tell us more about the history of journalism at Central.
Right. I think anybody who attended Central, really appreciates the sense of history of the place. And the Register and the book are obviously a huge part of that history. And so Josh is going to run through some slides here. We're going to give a quick historical overview. I learned a lot from this, actually. 1859, everybody recognizes that as Central's founding year. Well, the newspaper kind of started right around that time, too. It was called the Free School Advocate. It was actually written by hand and was read aloud at school assemblies. The first issue of the Register came along in December 1886. As most of you know, we're all very proud that it is still the oldest continuously published newspaper west of the Mississippi, and may that continue for a long time. That name, Ed Victor Rosewater, when I saw that on the slide, I was really struck by that, because that's a huge name in Omaha journalism history. His father was actually the founder of the Omaha Bee newspaper, which was the big competitor at the time for my fair publication I work for now. And Victor actually ran the newspaper after the death of his father. So very interesting that he was one of the first editors there. 1897 on the next slide, that's when it was called the Register Annual at the time. That was the first yearbook. In 1889, there's a little scoop about how cold the school was, and it tells you a little bit about the power of journalism, I guess. And in 1901, believe it or not, the original editor was actually operated as a business. Two members of the senior class would essentially operate it on a as a profit-making business. And it was in 1904 that on the next slide, you'll see that the faculty actually took over and began to oversee the newspaper, and the school, it became basically a school publication at that time. 1906, the first female editor of the Register. We were always ahead of our time. 1922, on the next slide, you'll see the Register officially became the O-Book. They were first printed in color in 1863, or 1863, 1963. 1987, the first color print of the Register, and this is where I feel old because that was after me. And here's another one. So this is the dividing line, 1988. whether you knocked out your computer on a manual or electric typewriter or did so on a computer, 1988, it looks like, was the dividing line there. I knocked mine out on an electric computer or electric typewriter. So now you know when all that happened. And then the final slide, you know, everyone knows the history under Mr. Gaherty. The more recent history of the paper is quite distinguished as well, no less special. They started entering it in the National Pacemaker Award, which is the highest award available for student publications in high school and college. They won the National Pacemaker Award 5 times, you know, between the 80s and the 2000s. And of course, the Register is still published today, both online and in print. And I hope some of you at times have had a chance to see it. We know many of you probably have your own O-Book and Register memories. Feel free to share them in the chat function. And also, if we have time later on, when we're all done, hopefully if we don't yammer on too much, people will be able to get on and share some of their memories in person. But now we want to get to our guests, because we have 3 kind of very interesting and special guests. And the first one we've already spoken to today and spoken much about, and for good reason. During his 32-year career at Central, Mike Gaherty had a profound impact on the lives of many students as both a teacher and a mentor. His students in the Register won many awards in addition to his focus on excellence in reporting and writing. He helped students understand the business side of journalism through ad sales, both at the Register and the Yearbook. For his efforts, Mike has been the recipient of the Alice Buffett Outstanding Teacher Award. He would have been one of Central's very first recipients of that award. He won a Lifetime Achievement Award from the UNO Communications Department, won the Gunnar Horn Journalism Award from Creighton University. That's a name we're going to hear again in our discussion. And he is, of course, also in the Central High Hall of Fame. So Mr. Gaherty, always good to see you, and thanks for being here.
And I was just waving my first yearbook.
Hey, you didn't tell me you were going to bring along visuals. That's awesome.
Harold Gruby was the editor.
That's right.
Oh, that's incredible. I'm so glad we have that history here today. Well, first of all, we mentioned Gunnar Horn. Tell us about the track that first brought you to Central, Mr. Gaherty.
When I was in college, Creighton University, I was a student teacher for Gunnar Horn at Benson. And I'm telling you, I learned so much from him. And I was with him for a semester, and he lost a teacher the second semester, an English teacher. And he got me the job, basically. So I started out at Benson as an English teacher. And during that semester, I also helped out a great deal with him, with the yearbook and the newspaper. Then at the end of my semester there, a job opened up at Central. The journalism teacher left and the job was open. And again, Gunnar Horn was really, I'm certain he was responsible for getting me the job at Central, because he put in some very good words for me. And so that's how I got the job. So my experience with Gunnar Horn was so important. And yet, when I was at Central the first year, he was one of my competitors. He always did well at competitions. And I remember I had a telephone chat with him ahead of time and told him we were out after them that year. and we won.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he told me afterwards, he said, I don't like losing, but he said, if I had to lose, I'm glad it was to you, which I thought was a wonderful thing for him to say.
Well, he was a great gentleman that I actually had the opportunity to meet at one time too. What did you most enjoy about teaching at Central, and in particular work with the Central Register and Yearbook staffs?
Well, that's a toughie. You know, it all boils down to the staffs. I mean, I had some students over the years, some great staff members, and it was great fun to work with them. And we always did interesting things. I know we talked about this earlier. One of my very interesting early experiences took place for it was an issue that came out in which they wanted to do something really special. And so they did a story on the, what do I call it, Henry? A story about how the courtyard
Oh,
had been turned into an aquarium.
right. They turned the
And-
courtyard into an aquarium.
Yes, and this was in the day before computer work, so anything you were going to do had to be done by hand. And so they did an interesting picture that they took of an aquarium, a small aquarium, and they then blew that picture up, took a picture of the entrance to the courtyard and mounted the picture behind it and made that courtyard look like it was just full of fish. And the story came out that it had been turned into an aquarium. And one of the things I thought was most interesting about this, students walked through, this was during the winter and the aquarium was, or the courtyard was always closed, but students walked through the courtyard because it was open that day. They went to their homerooms, they got their yearbook, or they got their newspaper, and the newspaper had this marvelous picture of the courtyard being turned into an aquarium. And they rushed out of homeroom when it was over to get down to see that, even though they had just walked through it a short time before. One person who did not appreciate this story was the principal, J. Arthur Nelson. And J. Arthur was upset about it because so many parents came to see this marvelous addition to Central High, which didn't exist. And he had to explain to them that it had been done as a joke for the newspaper. He didn't like explaining things like that. And so it wasn't one of my better moments.
Wasn't some of the more serious journalism that was done under your watch, I'm guessing. And you mentioned the principal. Everyone, we all noted the passing of Doc Moeller in the past year. And he was the one who I'm sure you spent most of your career.
Yes, yes.
What was it like to work with Doc, and what was his general attitude towards the newspaper and the yearbook?
He had been, I'm sorry, my phone is ringing here. Doc Moeller had also been had been involved in journalism himself.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's true. And so he was marvelous to work with. He was always very helpful to us and liked things that we were doing. And so in the many years I was with him, he was just a marvelous principal to work with. I feel so fortunate to have worked with him for so many years.
You know, and you had students like Eric and Steve on here now who went on to careers in professional journalism, but you had students that went on to do all kinds of writing, didn't you? I mean, I just, in my time at Central, I can think of a very well-known poet. I can think of a comedy writer who helped create Beavis and Butthead.
That's true.
Tell us about, because you didn't just teach journalists, you were a creative writing teacher there as well, weren't you?
I was the creative writing teacher, and I guess the most exciting part of that job was turning out Dimension every year. And we used much of the same knowledge that we did for the Register and the yearbook in doing Dimension. So that was great fun. And I encountered some great poets and short story writers, and it was a good experience.
Right, some very talented people.
Yes,
And
yes,
I understand that once you left Central, you did a little bit of creative writing of your own.
I can wave another book in your face. So yes, after I graduated, as I always say, I wrote 4 novels, and I used much of the same knowledge I had used for creative writing and finding a source to sell these to. And I sent them off. My first one was actually the one I showed you, Growing Season. I sent this to Avalon in New York City at that time, and got a phone call from them, and they wanted this novel. And so they published this one, and then I was excited by that, and I wrote 3 more. And they took all 4 of them.
Oh, no kidding. Same publisher. Now, and I understand the romance kind of novels,
That's right.
but they're not the kind of romance novels I'm going to like turn down any of the corners of the pages for the good parts or anything like
No,
that.
no, not really. Remember, my proofreader at home was my wife. So those were all very good novels.
Oh,
And they are still available. And they are available from Amazon.
oh, okay.
So yeah,
And no, that's awesome. I bet you a lot of your students had no idea that you had gone on to do that. Well, Mr. Gaherty, it's always such a pleasure. We're so honored to have you join us today. And thank you again.
well, thank you. I enjoyed it.
Okay, great. Next up, our next special guest is Mr. Steve Marantz. And Steve is someone I've gotten to know a little bit over the years. He's
So have I.
Central High class of 1969. Steve is an author. He's a journalist. He's a podcaster. His first foray into journalism was as the sports editor of the Central High Register. That sounds familiar. He worked as a sports editor for the Kansas City Star, the Boston Globe, the Sporting News magazine. He's covered police, banking, city hall, state house for the Boston Globe and the Boston Herald. At ESPN, and contributed to the E60 Sports Magazine show and the 30 for 30 documentary series that so many of us are familiar with. And he's written 4 books, including 2 great books with deep ties to his alma mater, the Rhythm Boys of Omaha Central, high school basketball at the '68 racial divide, and Citizen Okoye, basketball on the making of a South Sudanese American. More recently, he created a podcast called Championship Stories, and he will soon launch another podcast that sounds very interesting called Dear College, that's going to feature the college admission and scholarship essays of high school seniors. Steve, good to see you again, and thanks for being here.
Hi, Henry. Thanks for hosting this.
Tell us where you're coming from today.
I'm in Swampscott, Massachusetts.
Okay.
I know there's 2 other Massachusetts people on tonight, Gordy Katz and Kathy Kirschenbaum, and there might be more that I'm not aware of. But hey, I want to thank you for one thing. You have Citizen Okoye over your left shoulder, so I appreciate that.
Exactly.
And honestly, Henry, if we could do the whole event tonight on your investigative series on OPS pensions, that would be fascinating. It was a tremendous reporting job. I tip my hat to you.
Oh, well, thank you. No, it was, we both know that the impact that journalism can have. I mean, you've experienced that many, many times yourself. A little bit about your time at Central, what it meant for you. If anybody who read The Rhythm Boys, which a book I just love, by the way, knows that was a very formative time for you. I mean, you actually lived that time at Central. Tell us about those days at Central.
Well, first of all, Mike Gaherty introduced me to journalism. And while I don't have any specific anecdotal memories, what I remember is that he imparted to us how dignified a profession or pursuit it is, and how important it is, and how basic it is to a functioning democracy. He taught us to approach it with respect, to get the facts right, who, what, when, where, why. He gave us all the foundational aspects to journalism, and he did it in a very quiet, understated way, but a very professional way. And I cannot express how grateful I am to have had my first journalism instruction from Mike Gaherty. I just want to say that tonight.
Thank you, Steve. That's very
very,
nice.
and that's very well said. I mean, the I don't know if people realize, people who work in the profession, how seriously we take this work, and that was absolutely very much drilled into us by Mr. Gaherty. I'm so glad you brought up that point. How about your overall time at Central? What were those years like for you?
It was great. I think, look, if you end up writing 2 books about Central High 40 years after you leave, it must have been a positive experience. And much of what you expressed earlier about the diversity and learning to understand what other people, learning empathy for other people, I think that's part of the Central experience. Great teachers. You listed some great teachers. I will add to that list Virginia Lee Pratt, who was tremendous, and I'm probably forgetting. Ed Clark belongs on that list. John Keenan was a tremendous influence on me as a junior in English. I remember John Keenan. I was in his class the day Bobby Kennedy was assassinated.
Oh,
and it was at the end of it was early June '68, and he was devastated. He just sat at his desk that whole hour and sobbed. And if you're a 17-year-old junior in high school and you see a guy like John Keenan sobbing, you never forget it. You never forget that moment.
Wow. I know. Well, Joel and I are friends we were good friends in high school with John's son, and we'll have to tell him that story. That's amazing. How about, what, did you already know when you were at Central that you wanted to be a sports writer? Tell me how your career tracked from.
Well, I found out how much fun it was.
Right.
Like you said, when you get your first byline, and the paper comes out, and then you walk through the halls and everybody's saying, "Hey, I read your story." All of a sudden you're somebody, right? You've got an identity. And then, then you realize that people are reading what you're writing, and it's important to them. And so you suddenly get very careful about it too. You don't want to make a mistake or embarrass anybody. You want to, and Mike Gaherty's stressing accuracy. So you want to do that, but you also realize doors are opening. My, first month of my senior year, I'm sports editor. I go to Warren Marquis and ask him for an interview because he's resigning as head basketball coach after 20 years, and Jim Martin's going to take over. And he invites me into his office, and he sits down and he talks to me for an hour. He answers all my questions, and I'm thinking, whoa, this is cool. Warren Marquis is talking to me like I'm a real newspaper guy, and he's talking to me like I'm an adult.
Right.
And so I'm really, I'm sort of understanding the benefits of journalism, sort of doors open for you.
Right. No, I had a parallel experience. I mentioned Bill Reed in my earlier comment. Well, he's the head football coach. And the way we kind of bonded was that I would interview him after every game, or, certainly for every issue of the paper. And I remember I'd sit down in his before school and in front of his desk, and I'd interview him. And the thing I remember about Bill is he would always talk really slow, so I could write down every word.
Yeah. Back then you're taking notes. I wasn't carrying a voice recorder or anything, which I didn't figure that out till much later.
Right. Then tell us how you broke into the professional journalism.
Well, this is kind of a weird story. I always wanted to be an Ivy Leaguer. My older brother was, but I didn't get into it. I didn't get into any Ivy League schools. So my backup school was University of Missouri.
Oh, that's not up for journalism.
And I go down there, and I just find out that they have one of the best journalism schools in the country. It was totally by serendipity. And I think, hey, I like journalism. I'm in Missouri. I'll just do it. And it was like fate or something, because it was a good fit.
Oh
You
yeah.
know, probably a better fit than if I'd ended up at, you know, Cornell or Penn or something like that. And I loved it, and it just went from there. You know, I'm at Missouri, and you know, I wrote for the Columbia Missourian down there, and then my first job was at the Kansas City Star. I had to drive 2 hours west of Columbia to start my first job, and I loved Kansas City. I met my wife in the newsroom there, and if I had spent my whole life in Kansas City, I would have been happy, but that didn't happen.
Okay, well, good. As I mentioned, I love the Rhythm Boys book, which tells the story of the Central basketball team at Central during this great time of racial strife and tension in the city. And you, like I said, you were there. You were interviewing Coach Marcus at the time. These are real life events you lived through as a student. So I'm curious, when did it occur to you that, hey, the story of that basketball team might make a really good book?
That's a good question, and glad you asked that. The truth is, it's like 2008. Okay, it's like 40 years later. I'm down in Florida with two guys I went to high school with, Harvey Josen and Bruce Muskin, and we're down there golfing, and we're just sitting around talking after golf one day, and we're talking about the events of '68 and Dwayne Dillard and the arrest and Wallace coming to town, and it was like one of those lights go on over your head. I said, geez, why hasn't someone written this? It's just sitting there. There's that story. And I'd just done my first book was it was a boxing book about Sugar Ray Leonard and Marvin Hagler, which was more of a Boston based story. But, and I'm talking with Harvey and Bruce, and they said, go for it, do it. And
Well,
that was it.
And the reporting you did on that was just amazing because apparently, and I assume you were tapping old classmates, but what I loved about it was some of the original material in there. You actually quoted from the diary of a girl, of a white girl who was dating one of the basketball players. Again, this is a time of complete racial change in the country, and I just thought that those details and the way she brought that story to life through those diary entries, that was just a gold mine. How did you come to find
that? Was a total stroke of luck. Total stroke of luck. It was Vicki Dallas. She was in my class, and I think I ran into her at my 40th reunion in 2009, and I told her I was working on the book, and she said, "Oh, I got a diary." I said, "Oh, really?" Like I was trying to pretend I wasn't all that interested, but I said, "Maybe you can dig that out. Would you mind if I looked at it?" And she went and dug through these old boxes in her garage, and she found it.
Oh,
and she said, "Sure, go ahead." And honestly, if I don't have that diary, it's not nearly the story.
It helped it tremendously. As a writer, I was looking at kind of how you wrote it. I mean, I love the story, but yeah, in my mind, I'm kind of piecing together how you put that together. Steve, I could talk to you all day, but I've already been told we got to kind of get things going. So great to talk to you again. Keep us posted on those podcasts. Where will we find those when they go up?
Well, when Dear College comes up, you'll know it, and eventually we'll want to get some Central High seniors to read their college essays for the podcast.
Great. Thanks again, Steve.
Thanks, Henry.
We'll move on to our final guest, Allie Hodge. Allie is a much more freshly minted Central grad rather than old guys like Steve and I. Allie was from the class of 2009. What I love about Allie is that she is a great example of, like so many others before her, who took her journalism skills that were learned through Central's O-Book and Register and put them to use in a variety of other communication fields. And for her today, that includes work for the Central High Foundation. Allie served as the editor-in-chief of the Register for 2 years. In 2009, she was named the High School Journalist of the Year in Nebraska. She won 4 national awards for her design and layouts. She won 65 state and national journalism awards for writing. At UNO, she won awards there as well. And then she took what she learned at Central and in her career in education and child advocacy. She worked for the World Child UK, where she designed information materials about child refugees that were distributed to the United Kingdom House of Commons ahead of the First World Humanitarian Summit in 2016. She currently designs communication material for both the Central High Foundation and for Thread Baltimore, which is an organization that supports low-income students in Baltimore's city schools. And furthermore, the skills she gained in the Register have helped her get 2 master's degrees in education, and she's currently working in law school. She's working on her law degree at the University of Baltimore. So Allie, thanks so much for being here.
It is honestly a pleasure. I don't know how I can follow 2 CHS journalism heavyweights, 3 for that matter.
I am so impressed by the record that you ran up when you were at the Register. So tell us a little bit about your time at Central and well, just your time at Central in general.
Yeah. I basically chose Central because of the Register. It had that good a reputation. And when I was in middle school, I wanted to be a war correspondent. I wanted to be Christiane Amanpour. I wanted to be working for Al Jazeera and CNN and BBC all at the same time. So I was really excited to start journalism in high school, and I took Journalism 1 with Matt Diebler my first semester of freshman year, and I was on the Register for the rest of my high school experience. Yeah. I was nominated as editor-in-chief my first year, and then it was passed over to me my second year, no election or anything like that. So I got the unique opportunity to do it for 2 straight years, and that was the best experience of my life.
What I've heard about the Diebler staffs is you guys did journalism 24/7 to the exclusion of just about everything else, including like your schoolwork.
Yeah, so I will preface though, it did earn me a scholarship. But one thing that was a characterization of the Diebler era, it was a really incredible experience being his student, was that he brought the fierceness and the intensity to the journalism room that maybe hadn't been there before or had been differently. And I think that our experience at the Register really represented maybe what the media is now, where it's like cutthroat and like intense and quick, so fast. So I remember my high school experience as a blur, mostly because it was the environment where like, Allie, you have a story, get it done by 9th hour, it's 4th hour now. And I would do it.
Yeah, my journalism experience was much more genteel compared to
yeah.
your.
I do have a story, but y'all have to promise not to tell anyone, although I've been out of high school for 10 years now. So I would get a lot of stories that I had to get done really quickly. And so I would track down the people I wanted to interview, and I wanted to interview them in the hallway, which obviously meant that I was never going to get to class on time. So I lifted a passbook from my favorite teacher's desk, and I kept it in a hidden pocket in my backpack. And whenever I had to like run to the gym to interview an athlete, I would write myself a pass so that I was always an acceptable 5 to 10 minutes late for my next class.
Wow, I don't know if the statute of limitations has expired on that. Now you're doing work in the Baltimore city schools, which, like Omaha, is a large, urban school district. How did your time at Central prepare you for that work?
Central still is, and especially was when I was there, a diverse environment. And I think Central did an incredible job of introducing all of us to different walks of life, and with that, maybe some strained realities of life. And that has prepared me to approach my work in Baltimore with a lot of confidence and a great amount of empathy, and the skills that I learned that helped me fit in everywhere at Central helped me fit in anywhere I need to be in Baltimore. And what I love about that for our students is that you get this great richness out of life when you can be in multiple rooms, and Central definitely prepared me for that. I mean, and also the register, I was interviewing everyone. So
Right.
learned to talk to everyone.
That's awesome. And I'm glad we have a law student represented here, because I would bet there have been dozens, if not hundreds, of Central Register alums who have gone on to become lawyers, because I know of some. How did your work at the Register and the skills that you gained there in journalism, has that made you a better law student, and how?
Yes. So Diebler had this phrase, and I still say it to myself all the time. And it was, if you want to be a better writer, you got to be a better reader. And so he would push us to read the newspaper every day. And actually do your English reading homework. Like, don't skip that. Skip the science. But so if you want to be a better writer, you have to be a better reader. And I really did believe that, and I still believe that. So in high school, I was reading furiously, and that continued through college, and I'll be darned, it turned me into an academic. And it also created the ability to be a highly critical reader and a highly nuanced and tight writer. And that is law school every day.
Right. I'm sure that gave you a big leg up on your fellow law school students.
Yeah.
Just the ability to think critically and to put thoughts down on paper.
And to develop a love of current events. Like, I'm a headline hound, and that puts you in a really good position in law school. Especially lawyers have to be just as curious as journalists do. And so a lot of those skills transfer. And I bet lots of young journalists coming from Central would be interested in law as well. And actually, I have to say, we have a young person on the Zoom call tonight, Alec. And I think Alec is an even more recent graduate than I am. Would you mind saying hi, Alec? I'm sorry, I'm sharing my time with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello.
Hey.
How are you? How's everybody?
Good. I'm like stoked that we got a young person on. Can you tell us real quick, what's the journalism room like now?
Oh my goodness. I was just telling Annalise that I kind of magically got to skip the intro class. I have no clue to this day how it happened, because I had no experience coming in, and Miss Blaney mistook me for coming from Buffett, where they have the Buffett TV. She's like, "Oh yeah, you can just join staff." And I believe it was Miss Andrus that got me from IB to just like, yeah, okay, you'd be on newspaper. Okay. I don't know what I'm doing. But now of course with COVID, they've moved virtual, but I just know that the journalism room for me was always a home. I mean, I would come down there every single day, every single morning, every single lunch. It was where I worked. I did homework. I did stories. I interviewed people. I ate lunch. I stayed after school occasionally. It was just family. It was a family at a time in my life where I had plenty of change going on and plenty of growth that I had to do. But it was always a constant. I was blessed to have 4 years down there. And of course, now it is all digital. It is all computer workstations and all that. And just a lot of fun times. I almost set a fire in the room. I will say that. I kept it a little secret, I guess, until today, but I would always eat mac and cheese, those little mac and cheese, the Kraft mac and cheese you get from the store, and fill it up with water. And so I put it in, and I guess I was on autopilot that day, because I put it in, hit the microwave, go back to sit down on my computer, and then all of a sudden I smell something. Like, what is that? And the microwave is smoking. It is smoking. I'm like, oh my God. So I rush, we open the door, I throw it outside, and you could smell it all throughout the basement. Now that the journalism room's down in the basement. That was a scary day. That gets the heart beating a little bit, but.
I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Alec. He graduated, I believe, class of 2018.
That's correct.
He's down in Lincoln now, and if you listen to the Nebraska Sports Network. You'll hear his name now and then. He's
Well,
already.
I knew you were on the radio. You have the perfect radio voice.
Thank you.
That's
Thank you.
that CHS confidence right there.
That's right. Yes.
Looks like you have the radio set up there too.
Yeah, I do. Yes, it's I turn every place that I'm in a little home studio, I guess. So.
Well, thanks, Alec. Thanks, Allie. And for not Allie, not only for this, but for all you do for the foundation too. Thank you. And with that, my work is done here. And I've done way too many of these Zoom meetings, but this has by far been one of the funnest one I've done. So I'm going to turn it over to Noelle and let her finish things off here. And Noelle, I don't know if you were going to open it up to anyone who wanted to quickly speak.
Yeah, if you guys have any fun memories, I saw a lot going off in the chat during our interviews, a lot about the famous Mr. Gaherty. If you have any fun memories, keep it to a couple minutes. We have a lot of people here, which is amazing. So if you have a quick memory, quick shout out, we'd love to hear it. Make sure to unmute yourself and I will help because I know we have a lot of eager people. So I can help figure out who's going. So
This is Joan. Can you hear me?
yes, hello, Joan.
You're all so young. I can't believe it. I'm the class of 46. That's 1946. I
Wow.
turned 91 this summer. I can't believe I'm still
Wow.
around. I got a PhD when I was 75 at the University of Maryland.
Wow.
I have so
Oh,
many
wow.
things to talk about, but I don't remember any of you because you're all so young.
We are so happy you're here.
Young is relative.
Joan, what was your favorite memory?
You know, it's really funny. I don't remember even taking journalism, but the O book from 1946, I was the senior editor. I edited the activities that go next to the pictures. And I remember the galleys and the proofs. You're also young. You have computers. You don't even do galleys and proofs. You probably never even heard of them. But that was my job. But it's funny, that overshadowed all my previous journalism stuff because that was such a big job. And I guess I did it by myself. It seems I don't remember anybody else working with me. I must have done it all by myself, but it was wonderful. And I've continued to write. Oh, and the style book is my Bible. I still have a style book.
The go-to.
And my career for 27 years was writing advertising. They called it editorial advertising in a shopping newspaper. It wasn't just ads, it was a story. I interviewed the owner, the professional, whoever it was, and I'd write a story about them and tell the reader why they should go to that place to buy something or do something. And I did that for 27 years. We moved to San Diego 8 years ago, and I finally quit my job at age 83, and I finally retired. And now I still do proofreading for 2 staff members here at the senior place where I live, all because of that style book. I'm still using what I learned at Central.
Great.
Oh, well, we love to hear that. Thank you for sharing, Joan.
I want to say something. Kathy
Sure, Kathy.
Kirstenbaum here with Mr. Gaherty. Hi, it's so wonderful. Do you remember me?
Yes, indeed, yes.
So everybody's talking about their very intellectual and very serious experiences with the register, but I and Margie Dickey, who is also here tonight, worked on the O book in '73. And I remember journalism class as being a respite. It was a place where we could go and have so much fun. And I think we sometimes surprised you, Mr. Gaherty, with all of our enthusiasm, but it was such a wonderful experience. There was no digital anything. We developed our own pictures. We did our own layouts. We spent many nights.
And they don't even have a dark room now. Can you believe that?
Tragic. But I just remember it as being fun, and we were so proud of our book. And Mr. Clark thought it was a terrific book, which was such an incredible compliment. But I just remember you, Mr. Gaherty, with such fondness, and it was just such a treasured part of Central for me. So it's wonderful to see you and
Thank you so much.
share those memories with you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can, Janice.
I'm Susan.
Oh, was Janice just there?
Janice was trying to be, but
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine. Janice, you go up and then Susan will come right to you. We got plenty
Okay.
of time. Okay.
I remember that Mike Gaherty was very young. He was even younger than Dan Daly, who we thought was the youngest
1 year younger
member ever. But poor Mr. Gaherty, he walked in to this journalism class with co-editors, which was a really bad idea because Jim Berquist and I detested each other. Probably still would if we saw each other. And the real blow up was on November 22nd, 1963, when President Kennedy was shot. And Jim and I had a knockdown, drag out shouting match in the journalism classroom about which one of us was going to write the editorial about the death of the president. And poor Mr. Gaherty, like I said, young, new teacher, had to try to separate this couple of people screaming as banshees. I don't know whether you remember that or not. I won. I was the Democrat, Jim. But I think one of the things I remember screaming was, "You didn't even like him." But that was one of my big register memories. Do you remember that at all?
I do, yes. How could I forget it?
I bet you never had co-editors again after that.
And I hadn't chosen co-editors.
That was Ruth
Yes.
Crone's doing.
Yes.
That's not a good idea.
It was a terrible idea. Part of it was I was considered a little bit still am, a little bit too volatile. And Jim was supposed to be a stabilizing force, and it did not turn out well.
That's an awesome story.
Okay, Susan, do you want to go ahead? Suzanne, do you want to go ahead and jump on in?
I'm Susan. Hello.
Sorry, Susan. Thank you.
That's okay. I am in a special position here because I not only had Mr. Gaherty for journalism, I was in his very first English class when he came to us in 1963. I was a sophomore, and the thing I remember about his class was we read Tale of Two Cities, and he teased us one day talking about the rusty fingers of Jerry Cruncher. Do you remember that, Mr. Gaherty?
Yes, yes.
I, for one, can never forget. And by the way, Steve Marantz, I was in the hallway the day Kennedy got shot. I was a hall monitor, and Mr. Keenan was in the hall sobbing that day too.
Wow.
Yeah. So I have all my registers still that I worked on. Here's one of them now. This is from 1965, and I was reading it before we came on with each other, and I can't believe how many errors. I mean, we really needed to have a post-mortem. Here's Eagle spelled E-A-G-E-L. It's sacrilege. But anyway, I love journalism. I love Mr. Gaherty as an English teacher as well as a journalism teacher. And of course, my fond memory, and Mr. Gaherty, I'm sure you remember, I think we spoke at the 50th reunion a few years back, was when our editor-in-chief, the one you picked, got canned by Mr. Nelson after one issue our senior year. You remember that?
Yes.
It was the days when my best friend was sent home because her culottes looked like a skirt. It was the day when Fred, I can't remember his last name, was sent home because his hair was like the Beatles. It was too long. It was a very anal time. And Mr. Nelson just did not like what our editor did with our first issue of the Register. So he was gone, and Jeff Farnham became our editor, and everything calmed down after that. Anyway, I expect I'm going to see you at the 55th next year.
Okay.
And hello, Kathy Kirschenbaum, my old pal.
Hello, hello.
Thanks, Susan. Would anybody else like to interject a memory, a favorite thing?
This is Eric. I got a question. Mr. Gaherty, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. What are you doing these days?
Nothing really. Nothing of significance. No, I had a bad accident a year ago and fell on the ice, had to have some brain surgery, and so I haven't been myself since that time.
So sorry to hear that.
Not
We're
good
glad
news.
you're well, though.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no,
Thank
you looked and sounded great. You know, Mr. Garrity's 80 years old now. Is that correct?
80 this summer, yes.
That sounds younger and younger to me.
I agree.
Okay, do you mind if I ask Michelle a question?
Sure.
About the foundation?
Sure.
Can you kind of give us an idea of what the foundation's objectives and initiatives are and what some of your challenges are right now?
Sure. And Noelle's actually was going to, at the very end, do kind of a wrap up. And I'm sorry because I have a naughty dog that's barking. He was just put in the basement. So if you hear something in the background here. When COVID hit, obviously, we had to start thinking differently on how we were going to do alumni engagement and keep our alumni engaged and involved with Central as we switch to virtual learning. Our students actually go back Monday for the first time in person. They're going in a 3-2 model where they're in 3 days, out 2 days virtually. So they've been doing digital learning the entire time. And the needs when COVID hit were very large. Obviously, we're at 57% free and reduced lunch. With that being said, there were people that were calling our office just needing help, that they lost their jobs, they'd never been to a food bank, all sorts of things. And, and we saw that around the country. And our alumni really stepped up, helped us with an emergency fund, and we were able to give a grant, basically, funding to every single family, staff member, whatever the case was that needed it. And so I thought that, was obviously really special for that. We just finished the Arts and Library Edition, which I'm sure some of you saw, the digital library. That was a $20 million edition. That money was privately raised for the school. And now the next thing on our docket actually is we're raising money for a statue for Gail Sayers. He passed away, and a lot of the former athletes wanted to do something to remember Gail. And so that's the next thing we're gonna do. It's gonna be placed outside of the football stadium. And I think that'll be a nice thing to memorize his legacy and different things that he's been able to do. Those are the kind of the new things that are going on. Obviously, we're taking our alumni engagement very virtually now. And there's been some silver linings in it. We would have never done this before, right? And a lot of people aren't necessarily in Omaha where they can just come back. And so I think you'll see us doing some more virtual things for people, try to engage people together and things like that. So it's like anything with the Eagle way, right? We're not going to get knocked out. We're just going to get stronger and hopefully be even better once we pass this storm. And I hope everybody that I'm talking to right now is healthy and your loved ones are too. I know we're going through a really tough time, but rest assured, the foundation is here to help the school. We've helped them tremendously before. We're continuing to do that. We're just kind of changed focus, really putting digital devices in kids' hands and helping with cameras to set up with teachers and hand sanitizer and you name it. So.
Thanks, Michelle.
Sure.
Gordon, did you have your hand raised? Did anyone
Can you hear me?
share? Gordon, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I'm another of the, let me get my video back on. I'm another of the Register alums living in Boston. And also Steve Marantz and I were in the great class of 1969. We lived through a tremendously exciting period when we were at Central and the year, and actually years immediately following that.
Hey, Gord, there's another 69 on.
Who else?
Sue Norman's on.
Excellent. Wonderful.
She was on the register.
Yes, yes, wonderful. But what a couple things I wanted to say. One, really to Mr. Gaherty, it's so good to see you. And, just as a personal note, I don't think enough has been said about the class that you taught in our junior year, the journalism class. It was an outstanding class. And I happen to be a lawyer in Boston, and I've obviously had a lot of classes between Central and now. And I have to say the journalism class that Steve and I took in the spring of 1968 remains one of the most memorable ones that I ever had. And one of the things that you taught in that class, which has seemed particularly apt in these recent years, was a section on propaganda devices. I don't know if you remember that, in which you basically listed all the propaganda devices, and I won't go through them, but suffice it to say, I never forgot them. And in these years, I think we've seen examples of all of them. As I say, it was an extraordinarily great class. We had great fun the following year, when our year of doing the register in 68, 69. And then, I haven't seen you in many years. I went on and became a college journalist and sort of a part-time journalist after college for a few years. And then went on to law school and have been practicing law for, I hate to say it, 40 plus years. And one of the things that I teach to young lawyers is particularly in their writing, is to really think of their writing much like a news story. Make sure you don't bury the lead, the most important part of your argument, and keep it in the front and repeat it from time to time. And just personally, I can't thank you enough for what you gave to us, how many years ago? It seems like it was just yesterday in many ways, particularly seeing everyone here. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say. And actually to Michelle Roberts, let me just add, I was also a debater when I was at Central. So I would love to see a session like this of old debaters, particularly
That's a great idea.
debaters,
Thank you for sharing.
Debaters of the 60s.
Perfect. Well, thank you. We will be marking that down right now.
You might need 2 hours if you get the debaters on.
Yeah, tell me about it.
Can I say one quick thing? Just Mr. Gaherty, it's so fantastic to see you. I think about you so much. I learned a ton, and everyone has said, the editing, the organizing, the leadership things that I learned when I was editor of the paper, and you made it so fun. And, I just loved being in the journalism room. Some of my best friends, were there on that staff, and a lot of them send their greetings, couldn't be here tonight, but are planning to watch the recording. I just saw Michelle's chat. I'm glad it'll be there because we all just think so fondly of you. And your son, Tim, was with us too. And so we are also thinking about Tim, and I'd love to reconnect with him at some point. And I actually think, isn't he here in Chicago somewhere?
He's in Chicago, yes.
That's where I am. So maybe we can figure that out sometime.
I'll tell him that.
Yeah. And just, I love that you're getting these thanks, and happy birthday. That's a good milestone birthday you got coming here, and just hope you know how much difference you've made in so many lives. And my family is now 3 generations of Register. My aunt was editor. I was. My niece is on it right now. So we all of us had such life-changing impacts, and a teacher like you is just one.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Appreciate you.
Did anybody else want to jump on in? You're more than welcome. If you don't feel comfortable, that's fine too, but we just wanted to give everybody an opportunity. Okay.
Michelle,
Well,
thank you. Thank you for putting this together.
Yeah,
absolutely. It was a whole office. Perfect. It was, like I said, it was a whole office, but I will let Noel, you want to go ahead and wrap this up for everyone?
Mr. Olson, did you have something to add?
I do not.
Jim Olson in Grass Valley, California. I was an editor in 1950-51, and a shout out to Ann Savage. She made me feel like I could write, and I went on to be a happy English teacher for my career. But anyway, I'm very, very fond of Omaha and proud of everything about it, and including Central. So keep up the good work, you guys.
Well, thanks, Jim, for sharing.
Mr. Gaherty, where are you?
I'm right here in Omaha.
Oh, okay.
Well, thank you again all for joining from all over the country. Special thanks to Mr. Henry for hosting with us on behalf of the Central High School Foundation. We had so much fun sharing this reunion with you, and our heartfelt gratitude to Henry for hosting. We are so thankful for your dedication to Central and the community. Now, we don't want to keep you any longer, but we do want to remind you that your support of the Central High School Foundation helps fund events like this rolling. You can support the foundation today by joining Generation C, which is our annual giving campaign. Details about how to join Generation C, if you wish, will be included in our thank you email, which will come out later this week. So that is all we have for you this evening. Thank you again for coming. It was good to see faces and fun to hear the memories and conversations. Have a good evening, Eagles.